Yeah, good morning to everybody in Spain, Portugal, England and Norway. Welcome to the Biowet seminar. And there are a couple of points of order we'll begin with. First, there is coffee at the back, but please don't take any right now. We'll have a break at 11 o'clock so that you can get some then. Yeah, you'll be disturbing the camera. Also, there's asked, please don't use Wi-Fi because it strains the system here. We'll be having live presentations today and online presentations, which is a bit of a problem for a digital dinosaur like myself. And at 12:30, we'll all be gathering to go to cycle down to the barn. But first we start with Kitty Celia and Anne-Elizabeth Schoheim from Dokka Upper Secondary School. They will be giving a presentation on the Biowet presentation. And Kitty is well known for having fought to get funding for the Erasmus project. So now we'll hear from them.
Yes, yeah, welcome to our Biowet seminar. We have been looking forward to finally being able to carry out a planned activity in our Erasmus Plus project. Not quite according to plan with regards to time and participation and so on, but still a seminar we hope will contribute to creating awareness of the ecosystem services and biodiversity in wetlands. We are very happy that so many were able to come here today, even if we would have liked our partners from England and Spain to enjoy some days in what is going to be a very sunny and warm day in Norway. Thankfully, our Portuguese friends were able to travel, and our friends in England and Spain will join us through modern technology. Now, both Kitty and I believe that our meeting with Chris Rostron in London had a lot to do with this application being accepted, because the project we're doing is a part of the Erasmus Plus programme, and it's the EU's programme to support education, training, youth and sport in Europe, and that's where we get our funding from. Now, after several attempts, how many? 3, 4? Was it third time lucky or was it fourth time lucky?
I lost count.
It's either third time lucky or fourth time lucky. It took us a while because this is not an easy, it's not sort of like a 10-page application form. It's a 50, 60, 70-page application form.
Horrifying.
Yes, so quite daunting, actually. But we had great help from our partners in, Randsfjordmuseet and Martin Mere in England, and Urdaibai in Spain, and Evoa in Portugal, and also Wetland Link International. So finally, our application was approved in the summer of 2018. And we think that we got to meet Chris Rostron. I hope you are with us now through the stream. Because both Kitty and I believe that the meeting we had with him in London in December 2017 was of vital importance to the result of our application. He had the network and the experience that we needed. So thank you, Chris. You say a bit about this?
Science commitment,
Yep.
Dokka Upper the secondary school. We have some challenges, as you know now, in the environmental things. We are trying to catch up with the changes that are coming sooner and sooner, faster and faster, and species diversity and ecosystem, especially wetlands ecosystems. And we also want to focus on recycling and bioeconomics at Dokka videregående for the future. So we want to act locally, and we have done so for many years, but we also want to think a little bit globally. So that's why we started this Erasmus Plus project.
Yeah.
This is Biowet, Biological Diversity in Wetlands, and it's ecosystem services in wetlands, and we have tried to focus greatly on biodiversity and climate change. We are also happy to have 3 partners from abroad that Anne-Elisabeth talked about, so we could act locally and we could think globally together with them. Here's a beautiful picture from the 3 sites. Martin Mere, the biggest one here, because we have all been there. And then we have Urdaibai in Basque country in Spain. And we have the nearby Dokka Delta Wetland Center. And at the bottom here, we have Evoa. It's not a good picture of Evoa, but it was what I got on the internet. Yes.
Yes. Now, we all know that the COVID changed a lot all over the world. And it also changed the plans for our project, unfortunately. So our plan was this. And in 2018, the first meeting we had was to plan the project. So there were a few of us who met in Martin Mere in England, and that went through. And then 2019, there was field work, student exchange and field work in Martin Mere in March 2019. So that went ahead as planned. But then, of course, came spring of 2020. And the plan was to go to Spain. Obviously didn't happen. Then in October 2020, we were supposed to go to Portugal. That didn't happen. And then this seminar was supposed to be in April, May this year. And it has been postponed. At least we're here now, and that's good. Now, and then optimistic Kitty thought that, but we could go to Spain and Portugal in the autumn of 2021. Not so optimistic Anne-Elisabeth thought, no, we're not. And who seems to be right?
We will see, we will see.
So far, our county, of course, the school is a county school, and so far the county has said that we're not allowed to go to take students on any trips. And the staff, we're also not allowed to go anywhere.
But
the
students want to, so...
Yeah, but they don't decide, I'm afraid. So, unfortunately, the project hasn't turned out the way we expected it to. But still, we hope there is a benefit.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have tried to manage to go through all this during this autumn and wrap up the project. And we have the ecosystem services raising awareness, and we are doing the monitoring on sustainable development in wetlands. And we are trying to develop a Biowet program to register the species that we find. And it's a quite big task, and we hope we can manage to do that during this last period. We have a lot of exchange of experience. We have webinars all over the year, so we are in contact with our partners during the year. And this seminar is focusing on wetlands, and it should have been the last thing we did together, but now it's not. But still, we wanted to show our foreign guests that we have a beautiful wetland here. And I know the Portuguese wanted to see snow, but sorry, no, climate change and all that. It's quite warm outdoors today. And we're focusing on fieldwork, and we have tried to cover all these factors, and I think we are pretty near to come out with a good outcome, in spite of the delay of the plans.
Yeah. And of course, we did get an extension for this project because it was supposed to end in June. We asked for a 1-year extension, but that was not possible. So we got the 6-month one. So we have to deliver a report in December and unfortunately return some money, I think. Yeah, that hurts. That hurts big time. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions or comments, perhaps you can take them.
Hello.
I was actually wondering about, you were talking about developing a Biowet monitoring system. Could you tell a bit more about that, and also why that is needed if there's no other monitoring system you could use?
Yes, we have been gathering species in the Dokka Delta for many years, and we have written down what we find and so on. But we would like all the wetland centers to have a list somewhere in the system over the species that they find in their wetland centers. So we could have reference over more globally, and we could have reference over many years. So anyone could use the data they put in their archives, so it would be open for all, and go in and have a look at Evoa and see what kind of species that they are monitoring down there. And perhaps if you have some data over a longer period, you could use that and say something about how the species are changing and or missing, or new species are coming. And then you can link that to climate change.
I just wondered if because there are other monitoring systems out there, would you develop your own, or would you use the
We have.
monitoring system?
Perhaps you can repeat the question for the microphone. It's difficult to hear.
Repeat.
The question.
Repeat her question, say.
Oh, yes. The monitoring system that are linked today are quite, they are spread all over, and they are not so tillgänglig, available for everyone to go in and have a look. So we wanted to do this like public science, that it should be open. Yeah.
Citizen science project in a sense.
Citizen science.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, are there other questions or comments? Okay, there will be more about this later in the later session, so it'll be possible to discuss this. Okay, thank you. The next person is Mari Gjestvang, who represents Innlandet County Council.
Hello, everybody. On behalf of Innlandet County, I will thank you so much for this honorable initiative and the invitation to this seminar dealing with the climate change, which is the most important issue of our time. My name is, as pronounced, Mari Gjestvang, and as a member of Innlandet County Council, I'm representing the political leadership of Innlandet County here today. I also serve on the county executive board, which is responsible for land use planning and climate and environment, among other tasks. In addition, I chair the Standing Committee for Education, so it is with great interest and pleasure that I participate at this event. In this speech, I will give a brief summary of how Innlandet County is approaching the climate challenges and environmental issues connected to this. I was asked to just say some few words, and I planned to have a little manuscript, but it became a bit more, so I now realized that I should have presentation like this, but sorry, I haven't. It's a very busy time. We have an election campaign for the time being, so there's a lot of meetings, so you have to excuse me. The political majority and leadership of Innlandet County consists of Arbeiderpartiet, or the Labour Party, and Centre Party, the Centre Party, which I represent. When our county was established 2 years ago, these two parties agreed upon a political platform where we recognize the climate challenge and that both elected officials and the society as a whole have different ways of contributing to reduce damaging impact of this global threat. This commitment implies support to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially focused on sustainable use of renewable resources like forestry and wood-based industry. Innlandet has a great potential and opportunities since about 40% of Norway's forest production is located here in this county, and because forestry and wood may play a significant role in solving the climate challenge. The forests in Norway consume 50% of our total CO2 carbon dioxide emissions, about 25 million tons, which indicates that the forests in our county potentially is binding up to perhaps 10 million tons. Furthermore, we have to focus on energy solutions and how to utilize our procurement power and many other subjects. And of course, climate and sustainability must be considered in nearly every case and assessment, not the least when it comes to attitudes, education, and science, which we often support economically. In this context, it seems very beneficial that our school at Dokka pays such attention to both bioeconomy and climate change. A central discussion in our climate work is that the goal of Innlandet County as an organization is to be fossil-free by 2025 and reduce our carbon and greenhouse gases with 50 to 55% within 2030. These are pretty ambitious but necessary goals. Innlandet County has now adopted a regional master plan. Its vision is adventures, possibilities, a county with strong roots and great dreams. The goal is to have leading positions in technology, industry, agriculture, forestry, and tourism. In the pursuit of these goals, we have to focus on sustainable management of resources, creating development and new jobs. Environmental concerns, climate included, are therefore also taken into consideration in any case where we support different kind of activities, companies, etc. At the moment, we are working with 3 different regional plans, and one of them is centered around climate, environment, and energy, and will include earlier plans from the 2 former counties, like a strategy for bioeconomy, with a large scope of efforts and means like providing and facilitating competence and science in our region, both in companies and in educational institutions, strengthening industrial clusters within bioeconomy, biofuel production, financing and facilitating projects, bioenergy, forestry and use of wood, sustainable agriculture and food production, and many other subjects. I hope you not feel like this is I hope you don't get tired. Innlandet County is participating in a project called BioValley, with an aim of generating more business from our natural resources. In Innlandet, which is a great county, the area is actually greater than the area in Denmark. We have a potential to create 25,000 new jobs connected to bioeconomy. Innlandet County are also working on a strategy for mobility where people are encouraged to walk, use bicycle, or travel with public transport. There's also a strategy to get more goods transported by freight trains, for instance, timber. In both public and private sector, there are great opportunity of projects, means, and efforts to meet the climate challenge that have to be emphasized both now and in the future. Innlandet County has established a climate fund of 30 million Norwegian crowns. In order to systemize the climate work, Innlandet County has established a climate budget and a climate accounting system. In this budget, 14 categories of projects are monitored and reported on twice a year. The climate budget includes projects like developing of towns, local centers and tourist destinations, partnership with companies and municipalities, reduction of food waste in our canteens, lowering the temperature of asphalt on our roads, a pilot project on fossil-free buildings, climate seminars with municipalities. In these counties' own activities, we are investing in electric buses and cars, electric ferry on this lake, Randsfjordmuseet, a bit south from here, buses on biofuel, establishing charging stations, sun cell facilities on school buildings, and energy economy systems. So far, 8 million Norwegian krone have been allocated to these projects from our climate funding, and so far 375 tons of carbon dioxide units are calculated in fewer emissions, but there are quite more to be calculated in the time to come. For our upper secondary schools, we have set aside another 30 million Norwegian crowns for investing in teaching equipment. In accordance with sustainable principles, for instance, we need electric cars for education of mechanics and other educations as well. This autumn, we will also have a climate competition among the upper secondary schools. I would also like to mention that Lena Valle, a school close to here, Lena Valle Upper Secondary School, is proclaimed as a green pilot school, which deals with the topic in many ways through teaching, cooperation in different networks, and investments in renewable energy, like sun energy and biogas energy, utilizing livestock manure, because they are an agricultural school. Another school, Nord-Gudbrandsdal Upper Secondary School, has a so-called climate lab that focuses on sustainability, separation of waste, and green opportunities in Innlandet. They also have a project on sustainability and entrepreneurship. And last, but certainly not least, here at Dokka Upper Secondary School have put a great effort into creating a pilot on bioeconomy as a field of study. You really deserve great credibility and honor for this achievement, and the political leadership in Innlandet County and the administration as well appreciate this and are proud of your engagement and of this event here today, together with your companions, where climate is on the agenda. I wish you all organizers of this seminar the best luck today, and I hope to be joining you for the most of the program. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mary. It's very encouraging that politicians are so interested in the environment now. We now come to two pre-recorded greetings. And before that, I perhaps should have remembered to introduce myself. My name's Alistair Brown. I apologize. The first now is from Tobias Salate. Many of us here know him, of course. Tobias is a biologist and a researcher, and works in the Secretariat for Ramsar in Switzerland. He's been in Norway many times, and he was here when we held a Ramsar seminar in 2006. Tobias is very enthusiastic, both about the Erasmus project and the Biowet project. So now we'll see the Tobias.
Hello everybody. I really welcome you to your seminar, and I'm happy to be able to speak with you. I'm Tobias Salate, working at the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands, and I'm here in the Jura Mountains, not far away, and we are celebrating, as you know, this year 50 years of the Convention on Wetlands. As you see behind me, Unfortunately, the battle is not over yet. We have still lost another 35% of all wetlands since the 50 years, since Ramsar is active and in place. And that is not good. Therefore, I'm really thankful that you are engaging and you are looking for the wetlands. But let's now go and continue to a nearby wetland which is still remaining. Look at this here. This is a much nicer place. This is the power of wetlands. I'm happy that we have here in the Jura Mountains still a few remaining river valleys with their fens, with the peat bog behind the small woodlot. I just flushed off a green sandpiper migrating through now at that time. And this is also part of a Ramsar site, by the way, in France. And we are happy that we have this. This is really a powerful thing. Those wetlands here, they keep the water during the dry summer for the agriculture, for the dairy farming, for the cheese making. They keep the water for the anglers who like the trouts and pikes here in the rivers. Those wetlands also have obviously their specific species which are linked to them, like those migratory birds I just flushed off. And I'm happy that you are monitoring them, and I really encourage you to go on with that work, because this is really what provides the power for your future. Those wetlands will serve your generation more than mine, and with the climate change they are important, because here in the peat soils carbon is stored and stored for a long time. It is not released anymore. And also this is a nice spot to come for recreation. So I'm really happy about the work that you are doing, and I wish you a great seminar. I wish you a great campaign next year, or as soon as you go on, and a lot of success with your efforts. Have a great time, and see you soon again. Bye-bye.
The next pre-recorded is a sign as well that the politicians are more and more interested in the environment. It is greetings from Sveinung Rotevatn, who is the Minister for Climate and Environment. He's from the Venstre, the left party in the government. And he'll be saying something about climate change and biodiversity. This is not easy. And biodiversity loss, challenges and solutions.
Hello, everyone. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to join you today. The climate crisis and the loss of biodiversity are our two major environmental challenges, and they are closely interconnected. In addition, we have the COVID-19 pandemic, and the pandemic has shown us how vulnerable we are. But it has also shown how able we are to adapt to new situations when we have to. This is a lesson that we can hopefully learn from. The latest report from the IPCC was launched with the message Code Red for Humanity. Unless we reduce greenhouse gas emissions in large scale now, the chances of limiting global warming to close to 1.5 degrees or even 2 degrees will be beyond reach. And unless action is taken to reduce biodiversity loss, 1 million species face extinction. This is the message from the International Panel on Biodiversity. This summer, we have seen heat waves, temperature records, forest fires, and fatal floods. In Norway, we can already see shrinking mountain glaciers, heavy rainfalls, more frequent floods, and landslides. Global warming is happening here and now. The decade towards 2030 is of crucial importance for both climate and nature. In November, the climate conference in Glasgow will bring countries together for reaching the goals of the Paris Agreement. The parties to the Convention on Biodiversity are to meet in Kunming in China to adopt a new global biodiversity framework, our working plan for nature the next decade. We have entered the decade where we are aiming to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the decade 2021 to 2030 is also the UN decade for nature restoration. These international targets need public support for implementation. The best support we can get is from people like you, who have a connection with nature. From your outdoor classes or work, your experiences with birding or fishing, exercise or walks in nature, or just hanging out with friends in nature areas. Wetlands cover around 10% of the land in Norway. Too much wetland has been built out and has disappeared. But now we are changing both our view of their value and our own habits. Wetlands store large amounts of carbon and thereby prevent climate change. Wetlands absorb water and can decrease both droughts and the speed of floods, minimizing the effect of climate change. In addition, wetlands are important habitats for plants, insects, and birds. The message from the IPCC report is alarming, but there is no reason to give up. We need all of you in the effort to stop climate change and stop loss of biodiversity. Every ton of greenhouse gases that we can avoid counts. Every habitat for biodiversity counts as well. Solutions that benefit both climate and biodiversity are called nature-based solutions. Thankfully, the best nature-based climate solution is to protect intact nature. Science is clear that we must stop the destruction of wetlands this decade. Restoration and re-wetting of wetlands are among the nature-based solutions we now scale up. This spring, the government presented a new strategy for better management of our wetlands. All your good work and collection of data about biological diversity in wetlands count. It will contribute to international climate and nature reports. And who knows, one day, maybe one of you will be among the authors of these reports. How we manage nature today decides what experiences and opportunities come tomorrow. I wish you good luck with the seminar and further work with Biowet.
We now go over to the first session of Biowet, and we begin with a live streaming from Chris Rostron. And of course, many of you know Chris. He works for Wildlife and Wetland Trust with the international section, which is Wetland Link International, which helps wetland centres working with the SEPA programme of Ramsar. And Chris should have been here, but we've got him here now. Okay, Chris, you're going to give us a talk about... what are you going to talk about, Chris?
Ramsar's 50th, I think, is what I've been asked to do, so I'm happy to do that. Good morning, Al.
Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you too. I'm very, very disappointed not to be with you here today. It is such a shame that COVID has restricted our movements in this way. And yes, as Anne-Elizabeth said, this has had some not very positive impacts for the Biowet project, but I hope it hasn't dampened your enthusiasm for it. And I hope that you will go on to do more with the project, because it's a great idea and a really nice way of evidencing, I suppose, some of the impacts of climate change at wetlands and showing how we as kind of people on the ground, we as citizen scientists can really use our experience to show the impacts of climate change, but also, as was mentioned before, the positive things that wetlands can do for climate change too. It doesn't seem like it was 2017 since we sat down at the London Wetland Centre to put the bid together. But Kitty and Anne-Elizabeth, I think, did the lion's share of the work on this. And congratulations to you for winning the project and for getting it to this stage. I'm going to share my screen, which I think is what I need to do. And then I will talk to you a little bit about the Ramsar Convention and the 50th anniversary of this multilateral environmental agreement. Do you guys see my screen? I think you do, that's good. It was nice to have a quick introduction from Tobias. As he said, 50 years is quite a chunk of time for a convention to have been actively working. But despite that, we are seeing a lot of wetlands still disappearing. As he mentioned, there's a huge figure associated with the loss of wetlands and the loss of wetland species. It's clear that although everybody recognizes that wetlands are a very positive and valuable thing, that they're not being protected as much as they could do. Which is not to say, I guess, that the Ramsar Convention is not doing its job. I think one of the things we need to kind of think about is what would happen if we hadn't had the Ramsar Convention, if we didn't have people keeping a focus on wetlands and monitoring what's going on with them. So bearing that in mind, I think it is a good point to think about what Ramsar has achieved and how we can improve that. And from our perspective at WWT, we have 10 visitor centres across the UK, but we also work globally on 2 key flyways in the East Atlantic, which is part of what you guys have been working on, and the East Asia Australasia flyway, as well as some work in other countries around the world. And we're celebrating our 75th anniversary, which officially happens next month. So let's just think about a few facts and figures. So when did Ramsar start and how did it develop? It's if it was the first multilateral environmental agreement. So this is an agreement between lots of different countries, specifically on the environment, and originally signed in Iran in 1971. Ramsar is a town in Iran. I quite often get asked what Ramsar stands for, but actually it's the name of a place rather than an acronym. And it was initiated very much by NGOs, by civil society groups. So although it's a treaty largely between governments now, it was pushed very hard by Luc Hoffmann, who was one of the founding members of the Urdaibai, a very famous wetland study centre in the south of France. By WWT, our founder, Peter Scott, was involved in that, and also pushed by the Dutch government. It is the only environmental agreement which is focused on a single habitat. There's lots of others like the Convention on Biological Diversity, like IUCN, so many others which cover a broader spectrum, but this is the one that started off just on wetlands, and it did start with very much a focus on waterbirds. So I think one of the things that shows is that taking an emblematic species or something that people care about, that they know about, is something that really helps to get these types of environmental movements going and energized. There's a very broad definition of wetlands, although it is one habitat, so it does include everything from marshes, rivers, streams, swamps, even man-made wetlands, like canals, for example, or rice paddies. And it goes out to coastal wetlands to a depth of 6 meters at low tide for a technical definition of how far out from the coast wetlands go. So it's very broad. It includes everything from mountaintop lakes right down to coral reefs. So it includes a huge amount of things. And that definition means that it's probably the most biodiverse habitat that you will find in the world. Australia, surprisingly, was the first country to sign up, given that quite a lot of Australia is very, very dry. The Cobo Peninsula in the north of the country, this picture of the peninsula, was the first proper Ramsar site that signed up. The convention actually entered into force in 1975, and the first meeting of the parties, which is what they call the COP, when all of the governments get together, review progress, look at the state of wetlands, and decide on what they're going to sign up to, took place in Italy in 1980. These COPs, these international meetings, are really essential, I think, in terms of bringing together the governments and getting them to agree to what they're going to do to help wetlands across the world. Just a couple of weeks ago, the UN recognized World Wetlands Day on the 2nd of February officially. So this is now an officially recognized UN Environment Day, which is an excellent step forward and hopefully means that more people will start to know about wetlands in more countries. Tobias works in the Secretariat, and their bureau was established in 1988. So you can kind of see the progression there of how how an agreement comes into force. It's a lot of work, and it's a real testament, I guess, to what people think about wetlands that the Ramsar Convention was set up at all. There are 3 key pillars to Ramsar. So these are the 3 focal things that Ramsar does. The first one, which I think is probably the most important, is the wise use aspect. So this is not just saying we need to take wetlands and we need to keep them wired off, fenced off so that nobody can go in and they're just for wildlife. It's about how you use wetlands sustainably. We all know that people generally only kind of protect the things that they know about or the things that they love, and allowing people to access wetlands in a positive way, in a managed way, so they're not damaging wetlands is a really useful thing. In many countries, people work and spend a lot of their lives in wetlands as well. So we have to remember that, although quite often in the Western developed world, we might see wetlands more for recreation, I guess. Many people have their livelihoods there. The second one is the Ramsar site designation. So Ramsar sites are the kind of handful, I guess, of internationally recognized sites of most importance in the world. This kind of gives us a good indication of how many there are, and it then allows us to track their progress, to really look at whether they, as a representative collection of wetlands, are doing better or worse, and what we need to do to help them. And finally, one thing which I guess you guys will understand through this Biowet project is the international cooperation element. Quite often it's simply because a wetland may be a transboundary wetland, in which case countries need to work together, particularly if it's a large kind of river catchment. Very often they go through many countries. But it's also about sharing expertise, experience, best practice. And this is where Biowet really shows the benefits of international cooperation, particularly when we're looking at things like climate change, when we're looking at migratory species. These things can't be tackled by one single partner or by one single country. They really need to be done as a collective. So how has Ramsar developed in the 50 years since it's been active? Firstly, I think, and most importantly, it's moved away from this idea of wetlands being a key habitat for water birds. Obviously they are, but they're also a key habitat for us, for climate change, for regulation of the climate. They're so much more than just a home to water birds, which is really how this started out. So I think now people understand that they provide huge numbers of ecosystem services, as we call them. And now that they're starting to use phrases like nature-based solutions, we can really start thinking about how wetlands are important for us, not just for biodiversity, although biodiversity is clearly a key element for that, but more widely, how we are really dependent on wetlands for our lives. In terms of Ramsar sites, obviously we started off with none, but we now have nearly 2,500 Ramsar sites. So that's a great bit of progress there. It's good to see that these Ramsar sites are still being designated. And it's also good to see that there are still countries who haven't signed up yet who are signing up. So although there are 171 contracting parties, which means governments or countries, there are new ones coming on board all the time. And I think Angola is the one that's just been signed up to the Ramsar Convention, which is good. So let's think about the situation of wetlands. As you saw from Tobias's little presentation, some of them are really not in good shape, still being exploited, still not being managed sustainably. So we are kind of seeing that our impacts of development and population growth are having a major impact on wetlands. It's quite disturbing, I think, when you see pictures of huge wetlands that have been drained and completely decimated because they're mining for the metals or the materials that we use in our everyday lives, things like mobile phones and modern technology. They require these specialist metals, and these resources have to come from somewhere. We are all consuming more, and we do all need to think about how we consume less, because otherwise I think the environment will not be able to support what we do. Just looking at some of the figures that I found on the Ramsar site. So between 1970 and 2014, populations of fish, birds, mammals, amphibians, and reptiles have decreased by 60%. That's quite a shocking figure. So there are things, I'll leave you to read the rest of the figures. They are slightly depressing reading. But we do have to remember, I guess, that we are coming to a point where things will start to get serious. They have already got serious. We're looking not only at climate change, but also the loss of our habitats and species, and we need to do something about it. And this is how your work through Biowet and work locally on sites forms part of that solution, part of how we can reverse this situation. One really useful thing, I guess, or one of the really useful things that Ramsar does is run a SIPA program. So SIPA is communication, education, participation, and awareness. And this kind of recognizes the fact that you have to bring people along with you on conservation. You have to ensure they understand why it's important to protect wetlands, to protect the species that live in them. It's been around for a while, since 1999, and it has a whole network of SIPA focal points and an oversight panel that steers the work of the SIPA program. And every country should have these SIPA representatives. This is how we kind of build on the work. This is how we progress it. This is how we encourage countries to really start reaching out, not only through classical education programs or schools, but also working with the public, with business, with decision makers to make sure that they understand why wetlands are so important. And that, I guess, is where Biowet could be looking in terms of the future activities and how it shares what it's done so far and shares the lessons that it's done. As Alistair mentioned, I work on the Wetland Link International program with my colleague Connor, who I think we'll talk more later. And part of that is about really using education and wetland centres, so education at sites, to help people understand why wetlands are so crucial to us and not just to wildlife. So you can find some resources that will help you celebrate the 50 years of Ramsar. If you go to the Ramsar webpage at ramsar.org, you will find a whole load of resources that they've developed that can be used wherever you are. So these are really geared towards helping you to deliver stuff locally. You can find things like toolkits, you can find fact sheets, and there's all sorts of things around social media and how you use that to promote messages about the achievements of Ramsar and still the challenges that faces for wetlands. There is also a strong focus on youth. And again, I think they recognize, like everybody, that young people, such as yourselves working on Biowet, are part of the solution to that. Clearly, we need to work with everybody. We need to work with decision makers currently because it's urgent that these decisions are being made. And from the county councillors' remarks, it sounds like you guys in your county are doing a huge amount of positive stuff for the environment, which I applaud you for. And this is definitely something we should all be doing. But young people, again, growing up, understanding the importance of wetlands, starting to understand why, what they can do, I think is an essential part of what Biowet is achieving. So in terms of what we can do, what's positive, what can we do better for Ramsar? I'm just thinking at the moment about the Ramsar Convention and how it can develop its work and it can really build on what it's done so far. Firstly, I think joining forces with these other big agreements, environmental agreements between governments is useful. I've just been attending virtually the IUCN conference. So this is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is one of the huge agreements between both governments and NGOs. And we were discussing how, freshwater and wetland conservation can be brought up the agenda with them. Currently, it's not specifically mentioned. We hope that after this Congress, there will be more of a focus on that. And that in turn will support what Ramsar can achieve. But also, I guess, Ramsar is making big efforts to think about climate change. The UNFCCC Climate Change Congress that's happening in Glasgow this year, again, will offer an opportunity to really try to bring wetlands up the agenda. Although it was mentioned earlier that, forests absorb 50% of the carbon in your county, there has been research done recently which show that coastal and estuarine wetlands can store up to 3 times more carbon than forests. So we shouldn't forget that some wetlands are an even better source for storing carbon than forests are. So something that most people don't know yet, but I think is becoming more and more well known. Simplifying what we do. Currently, there's a huge range of things that the Ramsar Convention does. It needs to kind of focus on a few key high-level things, I think, to make sure that people understand where they should put their energy, where they should really focus. for many countries and many people, I think that they see this massive problem and they just think, wow, where do I start? It's too big. But simplifying that and focusing on a few key things would really help. The non-biodiversity benefits of wetlands, it's always a difficult one for me because clearly I'm from a biological background. I work at a wetland center. I do kind of value biodiversity, and I do see that as one of the real splendors of wetlands and why we should protect them. But we do need to realize that we need to reach out to people who understand things more from an economic side, a climate change side, a resources side. Even if you think about the amount of rice that's produced through wetlands, for example, the amount of timber, for example, or other goods, even people who spend their time hunting in wetlands, they all rely on this resource. And so if we can appeal to that side of things and see how we can do it sustainably, then that allows us a better chance of protecting the wetlands. We do need to continue to monitor, to promote and share as well, something that Ramsar does pretty well, and something that Biowet also should emulate, finding what were the most important results or outcomes from your project and sharing those, and we can help you with that, is something to really focus on, and then taking some action after that. So some implications for Biowet, some pictures here from Martin Mere. I came for the initial planning meeting and I was really hoping to join you today, but I guess virtually is better than nothing. What you are talking about today, I guess, what are the key lessons learned from the activities, despite the fact that you couldn't meet together as much as you would have liked, build on the stuff that you have managed, and really pull out some of the issues that are arised. As Tobias said, Ramsar, again, always interested in hearing what people are doing. So aim high, make sure that you're asking them to share those lessons and using their networks to do that. Future work, that's already been mentioned, and I think you'll talk about that today and later. If we can help with that through our WELI network, through the MVP network, which is the network on the East Atlantic Flyway, we will do as much as we can. And developing tools and approaches to save wetlands. So practical things that people can do, both in terms of monitoring and evaluation, which you've done already, but also maybe looking at the next steps of action and how you kind of involve a wider audience and get them to take action themselves for wetlands. So thank you very much for that. As I said, I'm very sad not to have been there. The mention of coffee and waffles was also tempting me. But hopefully we will be able to work together in the future, and I wish you a good rest of the day. I'll join you for a couple of hours, if I may. And well done for getting this far with the project, despite the challenges, and good luck producing something positive for the future, for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was very encouraging and interesting. And very good to hear that you'll help other centres to use Biowet, because that's very important. As you said, it will be discussed later. Ramsar's a 50-year success story, and you said it's very dependent on international cooperation. How do you view the future for international cooperation? Are you optimistic?
It's a good question. I've just spent nearly a week engaging with the IUCN Congress, albeit virtually, but listening into many sessions, delivering some presentations and things like that. And I get the feeling that people from the nature conservation side of things are seeing things getting worse quite quickly. For climate change, for example, the picture is getting increasingly bad. And I think people are realizing now that they need to work together. They need to tackle this in a positive way. So sometimes I think maybe, we need this challenge. We need this imminent crisis to make us really sit up and pay attention and do stuff together. If you look back in history, I guess something like the ozone layer and the CFCs that we used in aerosols, that caused the problem, that caused the crisis, and we managed to fix it, although on a technical sense, that was easier to do. But I think that we are seeing more countries join things like the Ramsar Convention. And I get the feeling that the climate change issue is probably the thing that will push us to do more for the environment, to do more for wetlands as well. the more that we can do, I guess, to show how relevant they are, to show how essential they are for our everyday lives, then the better, I think, the better chance we stand of seeing that international cooperation deliver something effective.
Thanks. Other questions, comments? Here's a wonderful chance while he's listening to us.
Don't be shy. Anne-Elizabeth, you must have a question.
No, not really. Not this time. My voice is quite bad. It's not mumps. When we had our meeting in England, I had mumps.
You did.
You have that when you sort of after 7 years old, and now it's a really bad cold.
Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing to talk about on this international cooperation thing is that COVID has kind of made us all work better globally as well. Although I mean, there is kind of an overemphasis on developed countries and the West. I think that we are becoming better at responding to some of these crises, maybe. And that makes me think that it is possible to do this. It is possible to work effectively together and to find solutions. And, as human beings, you would hope that we have the intelligence and the resourcefulness to be able to do it. So I'm kind of confident that we can do it. I just hope that we get on with it and do it in time. So this is something I think where we all play a part in terms of pressurizing our friends, colleagues, the visitors to our wetland centres, decision makers as well. Use your voices, use your influence to try to make that happen, because that's how, when these governments do all come together at their international meetings, they can reflect that back and they can start to work with each other to see some of these changes take place more quickly.
If there are no more questions, then we'll just say many thanks, Chris, and we hope that it won't be too long till you come out and visit us, and we can take you out in the Dokka Delta.
Definitely, I would love to visit. So thank you very much for the chance to talk, and yes, good luck with the rest of your meeting. See you soon.
Thanks, Chris. We now have a presentation on Biowet activities in the Tagus Estuary Nature Reserve in Portugal. And it is Andreia Silva and Pedro Henriques. Andreia is the leader of the Evoa Bird Observatory, just outside Lisbon, Portugal. And Pedro is a field biologist. I've got to translate this for myself. A field biologist who works with research projects. So we'll now take and give the floor to them.
I have to correct you. I'm not the leader of anything. I'm just a biologist that works at Evoa. So. First of all, I want to thank our partner of Norway, because I'm very pleased to be here and visit your country. I will start with a small presentation about Evoa, and then I will pass the word to Pedro to talk about the activities that we made with our students, which data we hope that will contribute to understand a little bit more of these effects of climate changes in wetlands. So this image is an aerial image of Evoa. We are here, situated in Portugal, in southwest Europe, more or less in the center of Portugal. Evoa is situated in the Tagus Estuary Natural Reserve. There is also a special protection area and a special area of conservation, and of course also a Ramsar site. As you can see, we are really near Lisbon, more or less 30 minutes far away from Lisbon. The Tagus Estuary is one of the 10 most important estuaries in Europe and the biggest estuary in Portugal. During the migratory passage, have countings of more than 120,000 birds over that area. Here you can see our visitor center, our beautiful visitor center. Here, I can show you the facilities. We have a cafeteria with an incredible sight to the first lake, a small store at the reception, over there the reception, and a permanent exhibition. Here you can see the map of our lakes. It's more or less 70 hectares of wetlands. We have 3 lakes, 4 bird observatories, and 2 photo hides. Here you can see the 3 lakes: the main lake, the shallow lake, and the big lake. So the activities of Evoa lies on 3 big areas. Evoa is a place of conservancy, of nature conservation, a place of leisure, and also a place for learning. And now, Pedro, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andreia. Thank you. Okay, it's okay. Okay, nice to meet you. My name is Pedro. I'm a researcher for Evoa. And first of all, I want to thank to Andreia and Sandra to invite me to come to Norway. It's a children's dream to come to the Scandinavia country. So the first dream is finally. And thank you for Kitty and Finn to meet, and Kitty for this beautiful sweater forest. I'm a Norway man now because I lose my bag in the airport. So it's very, very, thank you for the sweater, Kitty. Speaking for Evoa, I'm a research. I research ducks, passerines, and insects. One of the tools that, very important tools that we have to study the birds and other animals is mark the birds. So we do bird ringing and long studies. We have preliminary studies, but with 20 years, 30 years, it's going to be a tool, a very important tool to understand the impact of the climate change. So we have some image in here of the bird ringing. I pass to the mainly project of duck captures. Is a scholarship that I have. This is the 5 year that I capture ducks. In here you can see a teal with a logger in 2017. For example, in this year we have a communication from Iceland that a teal that I mark in Evoa have chicks in Iceland. It was the first record for Iceland. We have in 2018 we put the first GPS in a shoveler of Europe. In 2019, we put in a pintail, a GPS that give a lot of good results. Shovelers and pintails, we have a lot of stunning results. For example, pintail do in 2 days from Portugal to north of France, Normandy, he does 1,080 kilometers in 2 days, travel at 2.4 kilometers of high at 180 kilometers of speed. So stunning travel. The only way to understand this is with GPS. We put also a nasal saddle in the ducks. There is no problem. The person says, oh, nasal saddle and the beak, how would they feed? It's no problem because they have lateral view. They don't have a nasal set. So we have ducks with 12 years with nasal saddle. And we have reports of all countries, almost all countries of Europe, reports of birds ringing in Evoa or in São Jacinto. Because São Jacinto is near Aveiro, and this project is a partnership between Evoa, Agrarian School of Coimbra, and Association of Bird Hunters in France. So Chris was talking the the hunter. It's very important to have the conversation between the hunters and the conservationists. It's so important because the hunters have a role, a very important role. They could have an important role in the conservationists. So it's very important to reunite that two parts. Because the capture of the ducks, they are made in the big cages. So I catch also purple swan pen, and so we mark with the yellow ring purple swan pens. We already catch since 2017 16 purple swan pens. This is a little bit the totals. Is only to show we capture 1,597 teals. The total of captures are 2,086 birds captured since 2070. So we have a lot of data to take care. And one of the things that we can understand the molt of the birds, so you can understand also the time of the hunting. We can take say to the government, wait, postpone 1 week of hunting because the birds, the ducks are still molting in that time. In the passerines capture, we have a lot. We have we control the wintering. There are a program of birding in winter, ringing in winter to control the population of wintry birds, the reproduction birds, and the migration. I have 15 days now in August, all day ringing to understand the birds that pass in Evoa. We have the reed warble. Is the 70% of the capture is reed warble. We have some common grasshopper. Because we have the nets, we catch also little bittern. It's very important because little bittern stay, because of the temperature rising, little bittern are staying more 2 months in Evoa that are 5 years ago. So all these tools are very important to understand. In some species, especially in the temperature difference, you can say that little bittern are stay more in Evoa during winter, and 5 years they don't stay so many months. And also a migration bird, sedge warble, that pass all years, and a very interesting population of migration birds. It's only one beautiful bird that probably you never saw it because it's a blue throat, but a leucistic one. It was stunning when I catch this bird. What is this? What is this? But I never saw it. It is only to see a beautiful bird that I don't know if because the climate changes it looks like white, but I don't think not. And all these activities, we have some young ones that came to Martin Mere. They helped me in the bird ringing and the capture of ducks and the moss sessions that we study also. And they in Evoa we have a lot of activities. Now we have a scholar camp. They go 1 week to help 2 days in Evoa and 3 days in the Laziria company. And they do a lot of activities like taking owl pellets and helping counting birds and helping in the bird ring, like I said. Here you can see they are separating the owl pellet to return to have the bones. So after we analyze it and binocular magnifying glass to identify the species of macromammals. Also, one thing that we do is the invertebrates in the water. We collect several samples of water, and we see what kind of invertebrates and crustaceans there is in the water. And there are a lot of studies of university, for example, from Lisbon, that go there and count waders and the relationship with the quality of water and the presence of more food or less food inside the water. So there are a lot of research projects inside Evoa and outside Evoa. This is a moth trap. We do a project. I beginning the project of study the moths in Evoa before this project, but we can adapt and we take the numbers of moths and the list of species. We could compare to the other years. So it's a project before the Biowet, but you can use the data to apply to the conclusions of Biowet. This is a mercurial tungstenium flashlight, and you put these egg boxes to the moths hide when they are tricked by the light, and they go there and go to the light, and they hide inside the eggs boxes. So you can see several moths in here. Plogophorum meticulosa, Plusifestucae, Pragmatesia castaneae, Chrysodites calcitis. This is less common, but it feeds all kind of grass. This is very important to the climate changes and to the wetlands, because Pragmatesia came from Pragmitis australis. This is the name of the reed in Latin. So this larvae is inside the reed. They feed to the medulla of the reed, so it's very important. And you could compare the population of Pragmatesia with the health of the reed. So very good reed, more Pragmatesia. So you could take a lot of conclusions after study data. But we have 5 years of project. Maybe when they have 20 years, the conclusions are more sustainable. These are 2 plagues of tomato. So it's very important also to understand if there are more moths of tomato. You can apply also measurements of the tomato plants that we have in the Lazidia company that Evoa belongs. And for the end, that the reason why we are here all is that what we could, with these tools that I showed you before, we could understand what is the climate changes and what weapons and what ways are to be done to minimize that climate changes. So we can understand the winter bird populations. For example, I have a chief chef. I don't know if it's a small bird that comes wintering all years in Evoa. I captured 3 chief chefs in the same day since 3 years ago. 2018, 2019, 2020. I catch the same 3 chefs in the same day, 5 of December. It was stunning. It proves the fidelity of the Evoa like a wintry area. So maybe if the temperature become rising, continue rising, maybe I don't have chief chefs in that date. Maybe they don't go so south and stay more north. For example, in choosing, sorry, Andreia changed me the. Yes, the order. Okay, is the breeding birds population. For the breeding birds, I give you an example that I don't catch, but is the lapwing. The lapwing it could be applied also in the arrival dates. In Lazidia, in Evoa, the lapwing 5 years ago arrived at the end of September. All months they start to arrive a little bit early, and this year they arrived 10th of July. It's almost 2 months of 2 months and a half of difference of arrival. And also in England, when I stay with Andreia and Martin Mere, they said that the lapwing arrives more early, so the grass is more high, so they don't have so much spaces to breed. So the climate change affects is the bird that I know that is more affected with the rise of the temperature. They start to arrive more early in the winter areas and more early in the reproduction areas, so affects totally the lapwing. Also this year, and to show once again the importance of these tools, this year don't rain a lot in the January, February, and March in Portugal, and the last 3 years don't rain so much. So the last 3 years, not the year before, but the last 3, I have cheeks of stone shed in the end of March. A lot of chicks. And this year I only have chicks of stone shed in the end of April. So the 3 months of rain affect a lot the reproduction of birds. With the arrival dates, the lapwing is the more example, but also I see that this year I have the first blue throat in only 22 of August. I only catch 2 blue throats in the migration period. And the last 3 years I catch the first migration bird that I catch is always a blue throat. They arrive at 15 of August and I catch 16. So this year, because of the rains in the 3 months, all the reproduction and migration go front 1 month. So the climate change affect all the things, and all this year because of the rains, 1 month to front of breeding and migration. In choosing migration routes, you could see with GPS the routes that they choose, and you could compare 20 years past that if they go to a place or other place and go to inside Europe or East Europe, we have several routes. For example, France, the ducks in France take more route to the ocean because they are very hunted in the coast of France. So they took the route in the ocean, go to Normandy and after to the North countries. Maybe if the climate change, there are storms, they could choose another route. So with many years of study, you could cross the information to understand better why they choose this route or the other route. Yes?
2 minutes.
Okay. And we don't have the video. In the moth populations, we can see the numbers because all the moths, some moths feed from several plants, but there are moths that only feed one specific plant. So we could cross this data. Migration moths this year, for example, I don't know why, but we have Aeolus lavornica. I don't know. I think it's hawk moth. It's a very big moth with pink in the wings, in the low wings. So he appears for the first time, and I have 3 in April because of the hot of the Africa. This is an African moth that came to Portugal. It's not so normal. Maybe climate changes. And to end, in the exotic invasive birds and plants also, could the rising temperature could improve the reproduction of the exotic birds, like the yellow crown bishop. This is very common in Portugal because it go out of cages. Now they reproduce a lot and they are expanding. Some exotic birds kill. For example, the weevils kill the reed warblers, so are very impacted. Maybe the rising temperature could help the exotic birds to breed and kill the native birds. So with these tools that I showed you that we do in Evoa, researching could be a powerful tool to understand the influence of climate changes in several aspects. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Andreia and Pedro. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but there is a long lunch break we hope to manage, and one can have it. We would like to give you a present to take back with you. This is a Brett? I forgot my English. Okay, but it is whatever it is. And it's painted by Peder Odnes, who's a very famous artist from the 1700s, who lived on the farm just above us here, which is called Little Odnes. So we hope you'll take it back and think about it, Odnes.
It's a serving tray.
Serving tray. Thank you. We now go over to to Urdaibai. We have gone from Portugal to Spain, and we'll be hearing about Biowet activities at the Urdaibai Biosphere Reserve in the Basque Country. And we go over live to Edorta, who is leader for the centre.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Yes, you're going to tell us about the Biowet activities at the reserve.
Yeah. First of all, I have to tell you that sorry for my English. I'm going to try to explain you all the activities we did here in the Urdaibai Biosphere Reserve, and I will use our technology about live cameras and different technologies to share the information about the wetlands from here, from the Urdaibai Center, from Urdaibai. But first of all, I think I'm going to do a short presentation of an introduction about our bird center, our center, and our Biosphere Reserve, where we are. No? I will use some. Wait. Okay. Wait. I'm trying to. Okay. Perfect. And thank you for inviting me to this event. And I hope you are perfectly there in Norway. For me, it's not possible to be there. It's a pity for me because I think to be now in Dokka Delta, it has to be amazing. But it's not possible, so we will try here from Urdaibai, from our center. First of all, I'm going to situate our center. I will do the presentation. I will share the screen. Sorry. This one. And I hope you are able to see the slide.
Yeah, we have
can
it.
You yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Well.
Okay, perfect. So more or less, I will use some videos to locate us. This is the Basque Country. It's in the north of Spain and in the south of France. Urdaibai, the Urdaibai Estuary of the Biosphere Reserve is just in the coast of the Basque Country, in the Biscay province, close to the coast. This will be the estuary, the main estuary of Urdaibai, with the marshes and the coastline. And more or less, this was the only biosphere reserve here in the Basque Country, and the main estuary in the coast of the Basque Country. I'm going to tell you the truth. It's a very small estuary. It's not big, but very important for us and for the thousands and thousands of birds and fauna, flora, and other animals that lives here. No? Important, and there are migrations, and these are more or less slides of this place that is the Urdaibai Center. Maybe I'm going to put a short video about our center, because our center is a center that we are a member of a society of sciences that names Aranzadi, and in Aranzadi we are located in the Department of Ornithology. Oh, I'm going to change the camera here, and it's more easier for me. And we are members of Aranzadi, and we are researching on birds and their habitats, mainly in wetlands, and not only researching and in conservation projects. We are divulgating and sharing information about the wetlands and the animals and plants that live there and conservation programs. And now, last years, researching on the effects of the climate change in this in this kind of habitats. No, I will change the images. I'm playing with the live cameras, but this one is the center, is the Urdaibai center that I can join you to know. It's 1 minute, and the center is an old fish canning factory that people who live here in this place of the Basque country bought years ago, and we applied for grants and to research, and with the Basque government, with the provincial administration, with European fundings, we could do this center. It's an observatory in the main wetland, and these are the wetland, brackish wetlands, freshwater wetlands, salty wetlands, and observatory towers, all for visitors, for school children. Yeah. Maybe here in the Urdaibai Center, and in the Urdaibai Biosphere Reserve, we have more or less per year 300 species of birds, most of them migrating, and we are researching on this place, no? Yeah. It's a view of the marsh with the center. And with the main estuary. For this presentation, I prepared more or less the activities we were doing with the Biowet program here in Urdaibai. I think you know that they were 2 very hard years because of the COVID, and it was not a problem, no, but we had to share all the activities, and we have to do all the activities in a different way, no? And I don't know. I'm going to try to explain you more or less our experience in these hard times here in Urdaibai, and I think in the rest of Europe, no? First of all, this is the center. And the wetland we have close to the center. We always do the activities here in the marsh, in the marsh and close to the marsh, maybe in 3-5 kilometers close to the center. So we are located in the high marsh of Urdaibai, of the estuary. And there are two kind of wetlands here. One that is the freshwater wetland, a brackish water, and a brackish wetland, and another one that is the tidal fields that are salty. More or less, Urdaibai is a very small place. It's a very small estuary. Maybe it has 5 kilometers of weight and 10 kilometers long. It's not too big. But there is a thing that is important, that there have a lot of habitats, different habitats, small different habitats. We have forests, different kind of wetlands, countryside with farms, grasslands, mountains. So in a very small place, we can observe and we can watch thousands of different kind of animals and plants. So I think the importance of Urdaibai is because of a small place with a lot of different habitats. I can't show. And for us, important, in our center, the visitors usually come. These are it's a group that before the COVID, we were participating with them. It's a secondary school here in close to the birth center in the region. And we usually work with them, with the secondary schools that are close to this center in Guernica. I don't know if you know that place, that city, but this was before the COVID, when they were able to come to the center to do the activities in situ. But later in March, it was a pity because we have an agreement to come to Urdaibai and to do activities. Everyone, I don't know, people from Dokka, people from England, from Portugal, but it was not possible. I hope next month or in the future we can join here in Urdaibai and in Portugal, of course. But this was one of the latest visits before the COVID. After the COVID, when we were in the COVID season, the activities were more or less different. There were not a big number of schools that come to visit Urdaibai to do activities. So we have different activities, but of course, with small groups, with masks, and something different. So a part of these visits and these activities we did in the March in COVID season, we were thinking that that we had some new technology. I'm going to say that word. We had different live cameras in our wetlands, and we thought, why we are not going to use them to share information and to share formation to the people that is at home between four walls, no? And not only for the people that was confined, for people that was in the schools, that those schools that usually come in situ to visit us, we thought, we are going to create a window to the nature, and we are going to arise to these places. We want to arrive to the schools, and it was, I think, successful. It was something incredible. Lots of schools daily they connect with our live cameras, with our locations, and with our broadcasts, and it was incredible. More than 100 schools were connected to different projects in the wetland. We were sharing information about the invertebrates and activities we did and we do in the wetland, but we share with them via virtual, not in situ. But it was, I think, successful. And for that, we have different cameras located in the marsh. I'm going to show you 2 or 3 images because now it's beautiful, the wetland, and these security cams that we use to share doing broadcasts. I don't know if I explain good, but we usually do like programs, events every day, weekly for the schools with like a documentary where I was talking about the wetland and I was showing people in real time, live, all the things we can find in the wetland. No? This is an example, some examples of these broadcasts every day. Sometimes this was in April. I don't know. A lot of programs. Some of them they are in Basque and in Spanish, so I will translate you. And maybe it's the time to learn in the nature, no? And when they were in the school, between four walls, no? So we started with this kind of activities, and in a minute I can share you, for example, this amazing view of our wetlands because we have the power of this camera. So I can show you the marsh of Urdaibai close to the center, the wetland. Today I think is a day for migration. Wow. There are a lot of cattle egrets. Sometimes the marsh harrier come. So this is life at the moment. We can use this kind of technology to share this incredible images of spoonbills migrating from the Netherlands to Africa. Then they have to stop here in these marshes, no? And this is life. This is life. So we use this technology to share this kind of images and to explain about and to learn about nature. Spoonbills in Urdaibai, I don't know, there are blank winter stilts there. Some of them, yesterday it was a very, it was a very incredible day, amazing, because more than 200 spoonbills were here feeding and stopping in their migration due to a front that came from a meteorological front that came from the south. But I can share you these images of these beautiful birds, like this cattle egret that is perched there in these places, no? So we use this kind of technology to share not only things about birds, but it's full of birds today, a lot of cattle egrets, and different waders and more. And here with this camera, we can show our landscape where the bird center is. Now the sun is at the opposite side. So
Edorta, I'm sorry, we're a little bit behind schedule, or in fact, we're coming very fast, rather long way.
Perfect.
So if you just have a few more minutes, perhaps.
Perfect. I'm going to do shorter. Okay. So I can. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And wait. Yes, and there is another camera. I want to show this other one. It's live now with the osprey, and this osprey is in our estuary. This camera is in the main of the estuary in the center. This is Urdaibai live with the coast side. It's a biosphere reserve. There are activities with people, with kayaks and beaches. So it's like a presentation to know when you come here in the future, what we can say. No? Okay, and to go finishing, the activities we did with Biowet program. This is our wetland. These are the points we took to do samples about different parameters in the wetland, bioindicators, invertebrates, physical parameters. So we did activities with people, with the school children, or with the young people, with traps, different, using bioindicators. Normally, we identify them and in the salty water or in the brackish water. And we are keeping forms, and in these forms, we put more or less, we characterize the place, the sample place, and which kind of different animals we can find, invertebrates we can find there. River survey, characterize the places with the deep of the water. Well, all the things we agreed in Martin Mere when we were there, and some parameters like temperature, pH, conductivity, etc., to to go keeping this information and this data to the future, no, for the future. So more activities with invasive plants. We usually remove them. We have very big invasive plants like the saltbush or the spartina is another kind of. And here with children and with school children, releasing or removing them from the moth traps with an expert from Valencia, with Fernando Juguete, moth traps that what we use to is for us these kind of activities are news, but we did this year with people the ringing station with different. We are ringing now daily in 2 months in the postnuptial migration with people that have come to visit and participate in the Biowet program. People happy with the kingfisher, and counting on census and observation of birds, different trips from the marsh, and we usually keep this kind of data information in a very nice application. There is in the Basque country that is Ornito, and is in some places in Europe too, in some countries, where we can keep the information about birds, and other animals, plants, invasive plants, and is, I think, something very useful for the future, because there are a lot of information that we keep there. And this was more or less the presentation. I don't know if you have some questions, or if not, thank you very much for attending me.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm going to.
It's your live camera coverage is amazing down in the water. And, it's good to see that you're using the Biowet and finding it useful. Unfortunately, we do not have time for questions.
Okay,
I'm very sorry. We've got to take these people out now for lunch. So, and we've got a very full program right after. So, many thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll now go over to straight over to the last partner, England, to Martin Mere Wetland Centre, where Chris Whitehead, who's the leader there, has one film, a short film, and also a student, Maria Scullion, has a short film, so they'll come together. After that, you'll get very strict instructions about lunch. So if we can go straight over now to Martin Mere.
Hello, greetings and welcome from WWT Martin Mere in our wonderful wetlands here in front of our Discovery Hide. Hello to everyone at the Biowet seminar. We're sorry we can't be there. It's been a great privilege to be involved in the Biowet project. We enjoyed a group of students from all 4 centres here at the start of the project. Such a shame that we haven't been involved over the last 18 months in person, and we wish you well for the future. I'm going to introduce Louise Cluley in a moment, but I just wanted to mention this year is the 75th anniversary of the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, so it's a very special year for us. I'll introduce Louise, who is our reserve manager. She knows a lot more about what's happening at the wetlands. She's connected with all the plants and the animal species which we're looking after here. So I will hand over to Louise.
Hello, my name's Louise Cluley and I'm the Reserve Manager here at the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust Martin Mere Wetlands Centre. Great to hear that Maria has been in touch. She's our placement student that was here during the project and she's got lots of news to share with you. Here at Martin Mere we were studying 3 species in particular, and that was lapwing, pink-footed geese and the Phragmites, the reed. Now with the lapwing over the past 3 years we've had a massive increase. So last year we had 36 pairs, which is fantastic, and they've fledged lots of youngsters. The pink-footed geese Their numbers have been increasing each year, and we're looking at 46,000 in the winter just gone. With the Phragmites, we do lots of management for that, so we've got a lovely big reed bed. Now we control the water levels, we increase, we reduce, and we trim out parts, removing it so that we get a mosaic of habitats. You want really old, really young, and everything in between. So I hope you have a great rest of your seminar. Sorry not to be there. It's goodbye from me, and now I'm handing over to our placement students for this year, which is Eleanor and Cameron.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm a reserve management placement student at Martin Mere with the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust. I started here about 2 weeks ago, and so far it's been amazing. I studied biological sciences at University of West of England down in Bristol, and my favourite topics were always marine and freshwater life, lots of stuff on estuarine beds. I visited Martin Mere as a child and I thought it was incredible, so the two have worked really well together. I've managed to get sort of a dream placement down here. I'm really passionate about climate change and the effects that it's having on our planet. Wetlands is a really good place to start. I'm really thankful that I can create the change that I want in this world with Martin Mere and the opportunity that it gives me.
Hi everyone, I'm Cameron and I'm a placement student here at Martin Mere doing the Practical Research Management traineeship. I've only just arrived, but it's been brilliant. Ever since I was a kid, I always used to come places like this, and that really inspired my drive to be into conservation, and it's a real passion of mine. And I followed that up by doing 3 years at Aberystwyth University with a conservation degree. And post-COVID, I'm now here, thankfully, progressing in my career. I'm hoping to post this placement, try and get a paid role in the sector, and really put my stamp on making a difference in the world by saving vibrant wildlife communities. I'd just like to finish on wetlands and say how important they are, because for me, when I came as a kid, they really inspired me, and they do such great work to save really rare species. So I just thanks everyone, and goodbye.
Well, thank you, Louise and Cameron and Eleanor. I'm going to leave you now. We're going to sign off effectively from WWT Martin Mere. Unfortunately, we can't be involved in any future Erasmus funded projects for the reasons which you know very well. But I do want to say we leave you happy in the knowledge that all our wetland centres are helping with climate change and helping to prevent species from becoming extinct in lots of ways, in campaigning and awareness raising, but also in creating and sustaining these amazing wetlands which we're all part of, which of course absorb carbon more than any other habitat. And so through the wetlands that we're creating and sustaining, hopefully we're going to leave the world in a better place. Thank you and goodbye from Martin Mere.
Hello, my name is Maria and I was involved in the 2019 Biowet project at WWT Martin Mere. I was actually one of the industrial placement students working at Martin Mere as part of my university degree for a year, and then I have gone on to graduate from that degree now. Things I took from the Biowet project, well, there were lots of things. I would say that as a young person interested in conservation and environmental issues, it can often be quite lonely. You often feel like just you're changing how you're acting and doing things just yourself. It doesn't have the impact that you want to have, and it's not actually changing many things. So projects like Biowet, which introduce young people to citizen science and the difference that you can make through citizen science, are really fantastic, and they can empower young people to feel like they're making that difference. So we did various surveys and taught them that hands-on those hands-on surveying skills with lots of different bird species, the lapwing, the pink-footed geese, and also talking about swallows, all these species being birds that you can get at different sites. So we can generate comparable data from that. We also looked at reed beds and filtration systems and invasive species control. All of these surveying things that we did, and also the removal of invasive species, really are transferable skills, and it gives the young people that hands-on experience that may not have been accessible to them without projects such as Biowet, and that hands-on experience can then really help them to feel like they are making that difference. And I would say that for me, Biowet definitely helped. It definitely pushed me in the right direction. And I actually recently applied for and got the role of youth representative for the BTO, which is a charity here in England. And I know that I would not have applied for this role had I not been part of projects such as Biowet. So I thank you, Biowet, for that. And I would say that it really is a fantastic scheme. And we do need to continue to inspire the younger generation, the young people, and to empower them. And I would say that Biowet as a project really does help to achieve that.
Dear everybody, my name is Mr. Espen Selvik. I work here at Dokka Delta Wetlands Center, and I'm very pleased to host you at this second part of the day. Hope your lunch was fine. We will straight go to the program, and please, now we will have Biowet activities in the Dokka Delta and Hynna Ramsar sites. Learning by doing. Please welcome on stage from the Randsfjordmuseet, Finn Audun Grøndahl.
Thank you. So I will give you some information about these activities, Biowet activities, in our two local Ramsar sites, Hynna and Dokka Delta. And together with, me and Martin Hansebråten, who will also be give you some information afterwards. Unfortunately, Sigurd couldn't be here today. So let me see. Learning by doing in wetlands in the Hynna, as we can see here, close to the mountains. And we would like that this seminar should be in early June, so you could all come and be on a lake site with a great snipe. We would like people from the Iberian Peninsula to that, but next time maybe. And wetlands, learning by doing also in wetlands, in lowlands, in the Dokka Delta. First, a little presentation of Hynna. It was established in 1990 and it was included to the Ramsar list in 2002, situated about 800 to 1,000 meters above sea level. I think it is the biggest Ramsar site in this county. Yeah. Am I right? And it's a mosaic of mires and bogs, old spruce forest, small lakes, and it's a magic landscape during the night in the summer. And what about activities for students in this Ramsar site? I will show you some of the activities that we have connected to Biowet. And one of the activities are using acoustic recorders. It's cheap and it's very easy to use, and we can use many of them around in the Hynna. area, and we are using them in April and May. So students can learn different bird songs and in order to document their first arrival date. So is this first arrival date, is it moving because of climate change? By doing this year after year, decades after decades, we will do this as part of impact of climate change. In the Hynna, the cranes are arriving very early, already in the mid-May. Also the curlews, inspecting their breeding habitat a little bit later maybe. This picture was taken this year. Students are also monitoring the lapwing, which is an indicator, Biowet indicator species, by counting breeding pairs, number of chicks. This is just very few hundred meters from our little museum up there close to Hynna. The number of breeding lapwings have decreased dramatically the last decades. So this picture is very maybe difficult to see it clear, but it is several ruffs here. It was common in the early 80s, and this picture was taken in 1983, but today it is gone. And several other waders also have become very rare or less numerous. And the reason for this, we will hear about that later today, but certainly it also connected with reduced wetlands or habitats. And therefore, as the minister said, restoration of wetlands is really needed. And the ruff is also a Biowet indicator species. I think we agreed on that. Students are also using traps for monitoring rodents and shrews. You can see also capturing the animals alive, so we don't kill them necessarily. We try to avoid that. And one of the transects is very close to Hynna, just outside. This picture was taken this year as part of Biowet. And the students are working now to do some analyzing the data this year and back to 2016, as this diagram is show. And why are we doing this? It might be one reason is that we want to document the impact of a reduced protective snow layer, as might be impact of climate change. Rodents are keystone species in our ecosystems, and the water wall, I think we agreed on that the water wall is an indicator species in Biowet. Arvicola amphibius. Yeah. Yes, yes. And students are also doing this, as Pedro was telling us about, this owl pellet analysis. And so they can get to know what kind of diet they have. And they can also use these nest boxes to count the number of chicks. And this owl pellet analysis is also part of Biowet program or the protocol. Okay, I won't tell more about Hynna. Now we go further down to this beautiful wetland area here. Dokka Delta, short presentation. It was established in 1990 and also included to the Ramsar list in 2002, 130 meters above sea level approximately. And it is one of the few unspoiled river deltas remaining in this region. I think there will come up some information about this from the county governor afterwards. It's a very important function as a staging area for many migratory bird species and a spawning site for many fish species. As we can see here, this picture was taken in May, just 1 kilometer in that direction, and we can see black-headed gulls and common gulls feeding on spawning smelt when they are spawning. Very shallow water here, very close to land. And it's not inside the Delta Nature Reserve, it's just very few distance outside actually. And what about the activities for students in the Dokka Delta? As we have seen from Evoa and Urdaibai, Martin Mere, students are sampling invertebrates in order to identify species year after year. But this is now a part of Biowet. And it ends up with a report about a very complex ecosystem. And also monitoring invasive fish species. This takes place in May. And it also included in the Biowet protocol, as we have heard earlier. And it's especially this roach population that we want to follow and to monitor, because it was illegally spread to the lake about 3 decades ago, I think. The pike also, but it was 150 years back in time. So another thing is using historical data. And I want this diagram, it will be too complicated to use this, but when we're talking about monitoring migrating lapwings, historical data show that in inland river delta here in this county, the lapwing is arriving 10 days earlier today than it was 50 years ago. And the pink-footed goose is arriving almost 3 weeks earlier than they did 50 years ago. They are migrating to the Spitsbergen. So historical data is very important. And students also sample. Kitty students are sampling smelt. It's a keystone species in this lake. Everyone is feeding on it. And for analyzing variations in the year classes and the impact of temperature on their spawning migration. Students are also using historical photos for a better understanding of landscape changes. And you can see this is the delta. It was taken 100 years ago. Completely different. Yes. Oh, a water shrew. Thank you for attention. And this was the absolutely last one. Maybe a little bit hard to see, but it's a red rainbow. Very late in the evening, raining and sun. So this is a cooperation in Hynna and Dokka Delta between upper secondary schools and 2 nature information visitor centers. Okay.
Any questions for Finn Audun? Everything was very clear. Yes.
No.
Yes, please.
I think it's really not a question, but now we have talked so much about monitoring and arrival and long-term generation of long-term data. So I would like that Finn Audun is just very briefly mentioning or explaining the significance for understanding climate changes, talking about why it is so important to generate long data series.
Yes, so climate is at least 30 years. So we do have to know. So if Biowet is going to give students are sampling, analyzing and visualize data, we have to do it together with historical data, because else we will need a lot of, we can't have results for many, many years actually. So so we have talked about that in the project, and we all agreed that this historical data is important. And this is something that have to go on for a lot of years, yes.
Okay. Please, yes.
I just wonder, are you centrally involved in any kind of implementation of the management plans for Dokka or Hynna?
No, unfortunately. Not very much in managed plans. Okay.
I don't need this one. You can just
get all the night.
Thank you, Finn Audun. It was great listening to you. We now go to the next. Yes, please.
Yes, I forgot the presentation with Martin. He is also coming on the screen now.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Martin Hansebråten, and I am one of the students of the first year of the Biowet project. I sadly couldn't be here today because of my studies, but I'm sending this little video message to talk about the project. I presume that my friend Sigurd and our supervisors Finn Audun and Kitty will talk about the exacts of what we did. So I thought I would talk a little about the experiences I remember the best and what I think of the program. We took part in so many of the interesting projects, so I could only mention a few things of what we did. My fondest memory of the trip was the evening we went to Martin Mere at night and listened to the bats. Bats, as you probably know, make noise at a too high frequency for us to be able to hear. For this, we had to use a detector that picks up the frequency of the bats and gives out a kind of clicking sound, so we can hear it. So when you point to the detector at the bat at night, it will click immensely. We could then listen to the bats, even though we could not see nor hear them. This showcases just some parts of nature that we normally don't see or think about, even though they are extremely important to the ecosystem and to biodiversity. Something more frustrating was when we weeded Spanish bluebells. Spanish bluebells are an invasive species in England who can both outcompete and make hybrids with the native English bluebell. This was a very frustrating task. This flower has deep roots that must be dug out, so the plant won't reappear. If you leave the roots, it will just reappear after a little while. Plants and invasive species like this are a problem in all of our respected areas, and it's quite a conundrum how we're supposed to solve it. This is also because of problems with climate change that makes it easier for some invasive species to spread. Something else I remember well was the wetland restoration at Martin Mere. I would describe Martin Mere as one big restoration project with all problems attached to that. For example, much of the area who are planned to be restored lay above many of the local fields in altitude. This makes it more difficult to keep water in the wetlands, and it would probably have been easier to make some of the fields at lower altitude into wetlands. But it's not easy to get hold of other fields for projects, and the relationship with the farmers are not always easy, with some conflicting interest between them and the Wetland Center. We also had some fellow students in the program. We took part with a very nice class from Portugal. The only problem was that we couldn't stay any longer. We had just started to know our fellow students at the end of the project. And I think we should probably have been pushed a little more into talking to our fellow students in Portugal. But that is my only criticism. Back at home, we had our own course called Bioeconomics, where we learned and discussed many similar topics. Especially the focus on invasive species and biological diversity were a big focus in the course. We also had classes and school trips to Dokka, where we learned about the great diversity of wetlands and took part in registration of biodiversity in the area. An example of something we found in multiple places is the Himalayan balsam, which is an invasive species both to England and to Norway. Actually, one way we funded some of our trips was by weeding this plant. Also, some bird species, like for example the lapwing, is found in most of our respected areas. Work and species like this help build a link between our areas when we discuss them. All in all, it was a wonderful experience, and I think this is fantastic for students, especially of the natural sciences, but also for everyone else to experience. I feel extremely privileged to have been able to take part in such a project. It's not many students that have the opportunity to travel abroad in this way. Lastly, I would like to thank all the people involved in the project, both in England, Portugal, Norway and the Basque country. Thank you.